Ladies and gentlemen, the National Chairman of the Executive Board of the National Conference of Christians and Jews, and Mrs. Felt. Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States and Mrs. Reagan.
I want you to have this flag. Our national anthem by the lovely and internationally acclaimed soprano of the Metropolitan Opera, Roberta Peters. And please remain standing for the invocation. The invocation by Archbishop Iakovos, Primate, the Greek Archdiocese of North and South America.
Glory to thee, our God, glory to thee. O heavenly King, Comforter, Spirit of truth, treasurer of all blessings and giver of life, who art ever present and fillest all things, come dwell within us, cleanse us from every blemish, and savor our souls, O Blessed One. For we live in a time when our eyes are bound to earthly pleasures and cares, while we search in vain for real comfort for our mind and our conscience. We thank Thee for enabling us to comprehend Thine expressed will to dwell in unity, and for Thine enlightenment, which has led us to discover the oneness that binds us together in our endeavors aimed at the promotion of peace, dignity, freedom, and justice in the world. Humbly and fervently we ask Thee to give us the vision and the strength to forge even firmer the bond of unity between Christians and Jews in this nation. We beseech Thee to inspire the great honoree of the evening, Thy faithful servant, our President, Ronald Reagan. Imbue him with the inexhaustible source of Thy wisdom as he strives to reweave unity and brotherhood into the tapestry of our national life. As we gather here to break bread together, bless us with a deeper sense of commitment to one another, so that we may continue with more dedication in our pursuit for one world community under God. This we ask in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
We'll have it, keep it right here and we'll pick it up. Now you stay here and I'll have the president come here.
But they told me I have to step over there for my name because of then the prophets out of heaven.
Well, you'll have to be here and he'll have,
Step over there to read them.
but he won't, he's got to read it into the mic.
And then I'll take it.
That's right, that's right. You put it around his neck over there. Oh, yeah. But, or else that would be a tricky. All right, we'll figure that out. But you have to. Very good.
Oh, that's yours.
I think maybe
No.
he probably says that I told you not to.
No. Well, all right, all right. May I have your attention, please? And will the waiters please clear the room? Little quiet, please. Will the famous Valley Forge Military Academy herald trumpets, directed by Major James M. Darby, please rise to accept our thanks and our appreciation. And will Lieutenant General Willard Pearson, Superintendent of the Valley Forge Military Academy, also please rise and accept our thanks. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this evening's annual Charles Evans Hughes Gold Medal Dinner of the National Conference of Christians and Jews. We are honored that Ronald Reagan, President of the United States, is our 1982 Gold Medal recipient. The National Conference of Christians and Jews, born out of the need to address issues of bigotry and racism over a half a century ago, has made principles of brotherhood and humanitarianism central to its organization, and has been dedicated to the commitment that human rights and personal dignity should reflect the moral fiber of our society. As an advocate against discrimination, the main thrust has been to address the problems of social injustice and inequity at all levels of society. It is the gathering of people of all creeds and all economic backgrounds that accounts for the strength and long years of NCCJ. This gathering brings together a mix of people whose opinions are not always the same. The diversity of backgrounds sometimes creates diversity of conclusions. It is, however, the common bond of purpose which acts as the glue to continue this organization. We award this gold medal to President Reagan, recognizing the challenges that he faces, and in confidence that his programs will not, as they are finally developed and implemented, strike at the people who have the greatest needs of our society. In offering this gold medal to President Reagan, we pay honor to him and to the office and express our continuing faith that that office, founded on lofty principles, should never abandon the cause of humanitarianism, for such cause is the foundation of our country. With 75 regional offices throughout the United States, the National Conference is the only non-sectarian sponsored national organization dedicated and committed to promoting brotherhood and human rights and to building interreligious and interracial understanding within the overall American community. Dais guests this evening have come from all over the country, including many of our national officers and founders, and many prominent leaders in government, finance, and industry. Our seating list this evening identifies each one on the dais, facing from your left to your right. May we have a standing ovation as our tribute to them? Don't overdo it. I would like to ask our four national co-chairmen to take a bow. Mr. V.J. Scott, who is our national Catholic co-chairman. Mr. William F. May, who is our national Protestant co-chairman. Mr. Bernard J. Lasker, who is our national Jewish co-chairman. And Mr. Nicholas Petro, who is our National Eastern Orthodox co-chairman. These leaders have helped to mold our present image. We are also pleased to have with us 3 former gold medal recipients, and I would like them to stand and take a bow. The Honorable Linwood A. Holton, 1975 recipient. Ambassador Jerome H. Holland, 1972 recipient. And Dr. Henry A. Kissinger, 1973 recipient. And we would also like to pay our respects this evening to the indefatigable Edward I. Koch, mayor of our great city of New York. Dr. David Hyatt, president of the National Conference, has devoted his adult life fighting intolerance and injustice. He has been relentless in combating prejudice and promoting brotherhood. I am pleased to present the President of the National Conference, Dr. David Hyatt.
Thank you, Irving, for those generous words. My brief but pleasant task on this platform tonight is simply to say thank you to all of you people here in this audience. First of all, I want to join Mr. Felt in telling President Reagan and Mrs. Reagan how absolutely delighted we are with their presence here tonight. And secondly, I want Irving Mitchell Felt to know how deeply grateful we all are for the ongoing and dynamic leadership he's given us as chairman of our National Executive Board. Third, I want to thank our national co-chairman, our national vice chairman, our officers, all the members of our National Board of Trustees, and all of you wonderful people on the dais, and all of you wonderful people out there in the audience for helping to make NCCJ the great organization that it is. You'll find in front of you a little pamphlet, One Nation Under God, Indivisible, which I hope you'll tuck into your pockets or your pocketbooks and take home with you tonight and read. Because there you'll get a picture of our program in capsule form. The late, great Catholic philosopher, Father Teilhard de Chardin, once wrote that someday, after we have mastered the winds, the waves, the tides, and gravity, we will harness for God the energies of love. And then, for the second time in the history of the world, man will have discovered fire. That, in essence, is what NCCJ's programs are all about. To stir mankind into discovering fire for a second time, and to teach him to teach people to respect their fellow man and finally to love their fellow human beings. Now, this brief pamphlet will tell you how the $8 million that the NCCJ raised this past year is right now being invested in exciting programs for better human relations, and how through our work with youth, with police, with parents and teachers, and with business and civic leaders, We are doing a quiet educational job that's absolutely vital to the moral and spiritual resources of our country. And we have a program designed as no other in this country to strengthen our national unity, to bring about interreligious understanding and interracial justice, and to help to make real that Pledge of Allegiance that we all subscribe to, but have yet to truly practice, that pledge of one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. That, in 11 simple words, is what the National Conference of Christians and Jews is in business for, to make real that pledge. And I submit to you, there's no more important business in this troubled country of ours today. I firmly believe that with the leadership the NCCJ has, indeed with the leadership right here in this room, we have the capacity to wipe out anti-Semitism for good, to make anti-Catholic and anti-Protestant feeling a medieval ghost, and to make racial prejudice the horrible, ugly dinosaur it deserves to become. And I promise you that in its attack on prejudice and discrimination and inequality, the National Conference will double and even triple its program if necessary, and there will never, ever be any neutral ground. And that's why all of you here tonight can stand up and hold your heads high and be proud of your share in the work of the National Conference. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart.
May I invite the First Lady of our land to come forward for a moment? Not a lithograph. This is not a benediction. You can sit down. We thought it was appropriate.
I liked it when they stood.
You can stand. We thought it was appropriate this evening to recognize not only Nancy Reagan's presence, but also to recognize her for some of the things in her own way that she has been and is doing that are compatible and provide a kinship with some of the things the National Conference has been and is doing. And so, and I'm reading, the National Conference of Christians and Jews honors Mrs. Nancy Reagan, the First Lady of the United States, whose special concern for the youth and older citizens of our nation has been manifested by her exemplary efforts in the area of public service to combat youthful drug abuse, to promote the foster grandparents program, and to strengthen family unity. Signed this day by all of the principal officers of the National Conference. You can say a few words.
Thank you very much. This is a surprise. I thought my husband was the only one. Thank you. I'm surprised, I'm grateful, and very happy. Thank you.
I have received a letter from last year's gold medal recipient, Mr. Walter Cronkite, which I would like to share with you. Dear Irving, let me express to you again, this is dated March 16th, let me express to you again my deep regret and great unhappiness at not being able to be present for the 17th annual Charles Evans Hughes Award dinner. As you know, the date of your dinner and the days surrounding it are the only ones available for the filming in Africa essential to this year's presentation of our Universe series on CBS. At our encampment in deepest Gambia, however, I shall be thinking of you with pleasant memories of the occasion last year when I was your honored guest and Secretary of State Hague presented the award to me. And I shall be thinking of you this year and the qualities of the new Charles Evans Hughes recipient. President Reagan is the absolute epitome of the award's definition for courageous leadership in governmental, civic, and humanitarian affairs. And I shall be thinking of you this year and the qualities of the new Charles Evans Hughes recipient. It is noteworthy that the past award winners represent almost every shade of political philosophy. It was not necessary, however, to agree with either their positions or their programs in order to appreciate the qualities of leadership and fortitude they displayed in pursuing them. The courage required of government leaders is in direct proportion to the innovative nature of their ideas and the special interests on which they impinge. It takes no special qualities to promote a non-controversial idea. It takes very special qualities to stick by those that attract the lightning of opposition. Will you please pass on to President Reagan my heartfelt congratulations on being presented your award, which now has gained more in its already considerable prestige. Walter Cronkite. The presentation of the 1982 gold medal to President Ronald Reagan will be made by Dr. Henry A. Kissinger. The 1973 gold medal recipient, winner of the 1973 Nobel Peace Prize, and the distinguished Secretary of State of the United States in an earlier period of global diplomacy in our recent history. It is with great respect and great esteem that I have the privilege of presenting to you Dr. Henry A. Kissinger.
Mr. President, Mrs. Reagan, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Felt, Mr. Hyatt, ladies and gentlemen, we are here to pay tribute to an organization dedicated to the brotherhood of man and to honor President Reagan for his contribution to its ideals over a lifetime of service. The privilege of bestowing the Charles Evans Hughes Award to President Reagan means a great deal to me. Most Americans have had the good fortune to live all their lives in a society in which deviations from the ideal of brotherhood are an aberration. I was brought up in a country where religious intolerance was incited by the government, where democracy was ridiculed and justice was defined by might. I can never forget the hope America represented to my family and me in those dreadful years. This country was a dream where tolerance was a guiding principle and personal freedom the lodestar. Even when later on I learned that America had its own, much less serious blemishes, there always remained before me the inspiration and vision America had given my family and me during a cruel period. I could never accept the self-hatred of some critics who use every one of our imperfections as the excuse to denigrate the experiment whose idealism, hope, and humanity had become part of my life, and that of all in the world who cherish liberty. I admire and salute the National Conference of Christians and Jews for promoting and standing guard over these ideals, and President Reagan for fighting for these principles, not only when it was expedient, but all his lifetime. The National Conference has honored me by asking me to present its highest award to President Reagan, who has the heavy burden of carrying the responsibilities of the Judeo-Christian tradition in a hostile world, and does so with indefatigable skill and dedication. On his judgments and decisions depend our liberties, the liberties of all free peoples, and the hopes of the oppressed everywhere. President Reagan has carried out his mission with a courage consistent with a lifetime of devoted service. Few outsiders have the opportunity to grasp the special agonies under which presidents labor, And I do not mean the fact that they work in an office that, by their own admission, leaks very badly. The President deserves our understanding and our compassion, because in contrast to outsiders and critics, he must take his decisions under the pressure of events. He cannot wait until all facts are in, or he will be overwhelmed by them. He is always alone, on a lonely road in which he is sustained primarily by his courage and his convictions through the uncertainties and probably doubts that must always assail him. He does not have the privilege of making only the most favorable assumptions about the future, much as he might yearn to do so. He often gets advice that if he only did a certain thing, reciprocal actions would follow. But he will be held responsible by history, not only for the best that could happen, but also for the worst that might occur. And contrary to the academic and the critic, he cannot say, I have made a terrible mistake. I will go back to my library and write another book. He cannot even rely on the guidance of immediate popularity. As Walter Cronkite has said more eloquently than I can, those who chart unexplored territories do not have associates with experience to draw on. And people do not forgive their leaders for catastrophes achieved in fulfillment of their wishes. In 1938, Chamberlain was by far the most popular man in Britain. After 1940, his policy became identified with the disasters of democracy. In other words, the critic can change his mind. The president's actions are nearly irreversible. The critic writes in pencil. The president writes in indelible ink. President Reagan has met the test of history. Who could possibly be more devoted to peace than a leader who knows all the consequences of modern warfare? Who could be more devoted to achieving social justice and progress? than the man who has available all the statistics of human suffering. President Reagan has chosen to teach us a painful but necessary lesson. That peace without justice leads to abdication. That conciliation without strength invites the blackmail of the ruthless. That ultimately progress must be achieved by the self-reliant. And therefore, in all the tactical disputes that rend our domestic controversies, we should remember that small democracies in distant places find their security in President Reagan's lifetime principles, not in this or that tactical move. And that the world that his revolution is trying to bring about is designed to uplift the downtrodden and bring mercy to the unfortunate on the only meaningful basis of their own contribution. Mr. President, all of us here support your efforts to build a world where the good can live without fear of the mighty, where the just need not submit to the ruthless, and where the downtrodden will be sustained by brotherhood and compassion. And it is therefore with great pride that I read this citation. If you would please rise, Mr. President. The National Conference of Christians and Jews presents the Charles Evans Hughes Gold Medal for courageous leadership in governmental, civic, and humanitarian affairs to the Honorable Ronald Reagan, President of the United States, for courageous leadership against the forces of aggression and totalitarianism, for courageous leadership in public service, for courageous leadership in his commitment to the American ideal of one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all, for courageous leadership in espousing the moral and spiritual values of our Judeo-Christian tradition.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, Reverend clergy, Mr. Mayor, the board members and officers of NCCJ, distinguished guests here at the head table. And Henry, I thank you very much for such an eloquent presentation of this cherished award. It is a deep personal honor to be the 4th president and the 30th American to receive the Charles Evan Hughes Gold Medal of the National Conference of Christians and Jews. I noticed from the program so far that presidents outnumber secretaries of state by 2 to 1 on the honor roll. You received the medal in 1973, and Al Haig was similarly honored in 1980. And by the way, Al asked me to pass along a short message. He said that he wanted you to know that yours has been a big hat to fill. Now, I know what he meant by that. And I assure you, it's a compliment. But I also want to thank you for coming all the way from California to pinch hit for Walter Cronkite here tonight. I know from personal experience what it's like to tear oneself away from retirement on the West Coast. One of these days we must get together at the ranch. What's your preference, flat saddle or Western? Well, the purpose of the Hughes Medal is to provide recognition for courageous leadership in governmental, civic, and human affairs, as you've been told tonight. So I can tell you that one can only accept it with a heartfelt sense of humility, and I do so in that spirit. One thing is certain. For more than half a century now, the conference itself has lived up to that ideal, striving with courage, dedication, and humanity to promote the ideals of brotherhood and tolerance that our nation was founded upon. Last month, we all joined together to commemorate this spirit in observing Brotherhood Week. But for Brotherhood Week to take on its fullest meaning, it must live the year round in the heart of every citizen. This has always been the American ideal. And if it is one we've not always lived up to, the fact that generation after generation, century after century, Americans have sacrificed to bring the ideal closer to reality says something good about that national spirit. Hatred, envy, and bigotry are as old as the human race itself, as too many tragic passages in the history of the world bear witness. What is new and daring and encouraging about the American experiment is that from the beginning, men and women strove mightily to undo these evils and to overcome the prejudice and injustice of the old world in the virgin soil of the new. Roger Williams struggled for freedom of conscience in New England more than a century before the Declaration of Independence. He likened a free society to a ship in which Catholics and Protestants, Jews and Muslims all sailed together, subject to the same tides, winds, dangers, and responsibilities, but each free to worship God in his own way. For as the Bible teaches, have we not all one Father? Hath not one God created us? George Washington, our first president, in a letter to the Jewish congregation of Newport, committed our newborn nation to a road that gives to bigotry no sanction, to persecution no assistance. The way's never been easy, and even our best efforts have left us far short of utopia. But generation by generation, year by year, we've come a long way down the road to a just society. It took a bloody, tragic civil war to end the abomination of slavery. Thousands had to lay down their lives before that great evil could be undone. But it was undone, and the descendants of slave owners and slaves alike today enjoy the same standing under law as free citizens of a free republic. The battle against discrimination still goes on, and much remains to be done. But in a single generation, an entire nation recommitted itself to the cause of equal rights and used the full force of the law to ban once and for all racial bias in public education, in hiring, and in the voting booth. Nowhere does history offer a parallel to this vast undertaking. With all its flaws, America remains a unique achievement for human dignity on a scale unequaled anywhere in the world. I recall tonight another important chapter in the advance of brotherhood that took place during my lifetime. It began earlier in this century, in 1928. This conference was born out of it. Maybe I shouldn't admit it, but I was already a teenager at the time. That was the year of my high school graduation. We've come so far since then. It's hard to remember the wave of hatred and bigotry that swept the country when, for the first time, a Catholic won the presidential nomination of one of our great national parties. But I remember, and we all should remember, the gallant fight that Al Smith waged against prejudice. Even in defeat, he struck a blow for tolerance and shamed the forces of bigotry. It took another 32 years before a Catholic would be nominated again. But in 1960, John Kennedy proved that the American people had overcome the last vestiges of anti-Catholicism. It took time, too much time, but at last the spirit of brotherhood prevailed. Year by year, in spite of all the setbacks, America has been a place where an ever-growing variety of races and creeds has learned to live together. I remember being told a few years ago the story of a Nationality Day parade in one of our major cities. The mayor of the city happened to be Jewish. His parents had come from Eastern Europe, where for centuries Christian had persecuted Jew in a seemingly hopeless cycle of hatred and injustice. But on that day, in that American city, his honor was leading the parade. And reaching the end of the march, he turned to one of the parade marshals and said, "Just think, in the old country, your grandfather might have been chasing my grandfather down the street with a gun. He says, here we're leading the same parade together. Ain't America grand?" And you know, it really is. We in America have been blessed with a sacred opportunity and a sacred quest. At times it may only seem like the imperfect reflection of a perfect dream, but to all whose ancestors came here as immigrants, whether they were nonconformist Protestants fleeing persecution in the 17th century, Irish Catholics fleeing famine and injustice in the 19th century, Jews fleeing pogroms at the turn of the century, or the Asian boat people and Soviet dissidents of today, all came to seek a higher goal than just mere physical survival. There was and is an element of moral principle in our national fiber that makes a difference. Americans are brothers, not because we share the same past and the same ancestry, but because we share the same ideals and the same hopes for the future. In his history of the Plymouth colony, William Bradford wrote that he and his fellow settlers knew they were pilgrims, so they committed themselves to the will of God and resolved to proceed. Well, that's been the way with each succeeding generation, pilgrims all. And as long as we stand true to our ideals, it'll be the way with every American generation to come, that we commit ourselves to the will of God and resolve to proceed. Last week, I addressed the Alabama State Legislature in Montgomery. Only 2 blocks from where I spoke, a courageous American named Martin Luther King organized a struggle for racial equality that led to historic changes in our society. He walked in the footsteps of other martyred Americans of other races and other ages. He, too, was an American pilgrim. The sacrifice that Martin Luther King made brings tears of sorrow, but the good he did brings tears of gratitude and a message of hope. Martin Luther King warned, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." And his message helped to guide us to a freer and more just society. The struggle goes on. To be alive and to be human is to struggle for what is right and against what is not. Our nation today is engaged in a serious and at times even acrimonious debate over what policies will best serve the interests of America and a troubled world. Here at home, there are wide differences over how best to tackle the twin problems of recession and inflation. The debate continues over how best to divide the responsibilities between the federal government and state governments, and between the public and private sectors in our constitutional duty to promote the general welfare. You know, back in the New Deal days, many critics of Franklin Roosevelt accused him of trying to destroy the free enterprise system. Well, FDR's answer was simple. He wasn't out to destroy our political and economic freedom. He was out to save it at a time of severe stress that had already caused democracy to crumble and fascism and totalitarianism to rear their ugly heads in so many other countries. In America, freedom was saved, and it gave us the strength to rescue a strife-torn Western world in the 1940s and 1950s. Well, today, I'm accused by some of trying to destroy government's commitment to compassion and to the needy. Does this bother me? Yes. Like FDR, may I say, I'm not trying to destroy what is best in our system of humane, free government. I'm doing everything I can to save it, to slow down the destructive rate of growth in taxes and spending, to prune non-essential programs so that enough resources will be left to meet the requirements of the truly needy. For 1983, we've proposed that 28% of all federal spending go to the elderly, an average of $7,854, or $50, I should say, per individual in payments and services. The federal government subsidizes approximately 95 million meals per day. That's 14% of all the meals served in the United States. Almost 7 million post-secondary awards or loans will be available to students or their parents through federal student assistance programs. Through increased funding for Medicaid and Medicare, the federal government will provide medical care for some 47 million aged, disabled, and needy Americans, about 20% of our total population, and 99% of those over 65. And approximately $2.8 billion will be spent on training and employment programs, providing skills for almost 1 million low-income, disadvantaged people, 90% of whom will be below the age of 25 or recipients of aid to families with dependent children. The list goes on, but I won't drown you with statistics. I simply want to point out that we do care, and the facts prove it. Government does have a responsibility to do many of these things because our citizens, you, the most generous people on earth, have so ordered. But there's more to brotherhood than government-inspired and administered charity. In recent years, too many of us have tended to forget that government can't properly substitute for the helping hand of neighbor to neighbor. And in trying to do so, government has, to a great extent, brought on the economic distress that mires us down in recession. Out of this economic distress, however, can come opportunity. The opportunity to remember our heritage of brotherhood, our responsibility to care for each other, not through impersonal government programs alone, but through the giving of ourselves with love and compassion. For this reason, I've asked William Verity, head of ARMCO, to head up a nationwide effort to recall to all of us our capacity for great and unselfish deeds. You, in this organization, are proof that that spirit still lives in America. I saw at firsthand further proof of that spirit just last week in flood-stricken Fort Wayne, Indiana. There on a muddy dike which was just barely inches above the flood crest, hundreds of young people, some hardly in their teens, all lined up passing heavy sandbags to raise the level of the dike. They were volunteers from all over the area who'd seen what was happening on television. Evening was coming on, and they had been at this since early morning, but they showed no sign of stopping. I wasn't exactly properly dressed for the occasion, but I couldn't resist getting in line and joining them for the little time I was there. Now, a roster of their names would probably reveal a variety of ethnic backgrounds, as would be true of any group of Americans. They included different races and religions, I know, but who asked? And the line was coeducational, girls and boys. and looking at their fresh, wholesome, and yes, happy, enthusiastic faces, even though they'd been there since early morning, I was looking at the future of America. And believe me, the future looked mighty good. This story has a happy ending. Before the crisis passed, once the weatherman wasn't completely correct, there were 30,000 people of all ages, inspired by them, piling more than 1 million sandbags on those battered old dikes. And now the floodwaters are receding and the people are being able to go back, start the cleanup of their homes. The spirit of brotherhood which you exemplify doesn't stop at our own borders. In the field of foreign policy right now, there are differences of opinion about how best to restore America's power and status in the world, and how best to meet the threat of totalitarian aggression. And there's disagreement over how best to deal with the volatile, challenging problems in Latin America and the Middle East. But while we may disagree over tactics in all these areas, we stand united as Americans in our underlying commitment to basic principles: economic stability and growth at home, peace, freedom, and a better life for peoples everywhere. Those of us who've been selected by the American people to serve in government have the bottom line responsibility to put these principles into practice, to foster an economic recovery program at home and a national security policy that will give America the strength we need to survive in a dangerous world and to stand by our friends on the front lines of freedom. In the Middle East in particular, a strong, credible America remains the best guarantor of Israel's integrity and survival as a free nation. A strong, credible America is also an indispensable incentive for a peaceful resolution of differences between Israel and her neighbors. America has never flinched from its commitment to the State of Israel, a commitment which remains unshakable. But for our commitment to be taken seriously, American strength and American integrity must also be taken seriously by friends and potential foes alike. Restoring both our strength and our credibility is a major objective of this administration. It deserves the support of all those who share concern not only for our country's security, but also for the security of our friends and allies. I'm keenly aware of the costs of our defense program, and will in the weeks and months and years ahead seek true savings and efficiencies. But we must refute the misguided belief that our defense program can be arbitrarily reduced and still guarantee our national security. The Soviet Union has built up a military machine unequaled in all man's history, and that arms buildup gives every indication of continuing. When I took office, the Soviet quest for military supremacy, combined with our own unwillingness to maintain American defenses, had produced a very dangerous momentum in their favor. We cannot allow that momentous, or ominous, I should say, momentum to continue. If we want to survive the hopes of all Americans for a better life, for more opportunity, for better futures for our children, can only be realized if we're safe and free. Though not small, the cost of our program represents an historically reasonable share of our resources must be devoted to this, and it's far less than a potential disaster a weakened America could face at the hands of a ruthless, powerful foe. The question before us is whether we have the will to make the relatively small sacrifices to preserve our freedom today and our children's freedom tomorrow and for generations to come. And so I say, just as those outside this hall who spoke with such passionate conviction earlier this evening, that yes, there will at times be disagreement over the path that we should take. But can't such a dialogue be carried on with decency and understanding without a tone of hatred? Our ability to carry on a dialogue, a debate, has always been the pillar of our strength in this land. And even as we disagree, we can remain as one in seeking a common destiny, a society that is just and humane and free. Every American, every citizen from every walk of life, rich or poor, black, brown or white, Jew, Christian or Muslim, northerner or southerner, has a full right and obligation to participate in shaping these policies and the programs designed to implement them. Our national dialogue should reflect the rich diversity of our free, pluralist society, and that diversity should be one of our greatest prides. Our democratic process is strengthened by the free flow and free competition of ideas. In the words of Thomas Jefferson, we are not afraid to follow truth wherever it may lead, nor to tolerate any error, so long as reason is left free to combat it. In the final analysis, under the Constitution, the President and the Congress must determine national policy in the national interest, but every citizen and every citizen's group is guaranteed the right to speak out and must be encouraged to do so without fear of reprisal or defamation. No group should be bullied into silence by racial or ethnic slurs or the fear of them. The language of hate, the obscenity of anti-Semitism and racism must have no part in our national dialogue. In the office I hold, and as recipient of this award, I pledge to you that I will continue to do everything in my power to enhance and protect the freedoms we cherish as a pluralist society. The rights of all our citizens are sacred in the eyes of God and under the Constitution of the United States. It's the federal government's right and responsibility to protect those rights for each and every citizen, wherever that citizen may be, at the point of bayonet, if necessary. In one of the most poignant entries in her diary, and in a far more tragic context than anything we face today, Anne Frank wrote on July 15, 1944, "In spite of everything, I still believe that people are really good at heart." To those who see only the problems and shortcomings of American society, I say, in spite of everything, our land and people are not only good, but strong of heart. America has already succeeded where so many other historic attempts at freedom have failed. Already we've made this cherished land the last best hope of mankind. It's up to us in our generation to carry on the hallowed task. It is up to us, however we may disagree on policies, to work together for progress and humanity so that our grandchildren, when they look back on us, can truly say that we not only preserved the flame of freedom, but cast its warmth and light further than those who came before us. Again, I thank you in the bottom of my heart for the great honor that you've done me. I shall do my utmost to be deserving of it. I thank you. God bless you.
Thank you, Mr. President. You know, while you were speaking, there was someone in this room knowing that organizations such as this can always use funds, and this is not a fundraising function. But nevertheless, when somebody offers an organization such as this $100,000 to speak for 3 minutes, even in your presence, I think we had to accept. So, Joey Adams, come forward. Only problem is, he said, the check's in the mail.
The most thrilling introduction I ever received in my life. Ladies and gentlemen, I've been a goodwill ambassador for 6 presidents of the United States, 7 including President Kissinger. You might understand it hasn't been an easy job these last 25 years being a goodwill ambassador for our country. I spent 6 years in Vietnam, and you know the good I did there. 3 years in Indonesia, they threw President Sukarno the hell out. 5 years in Ethiopia, you know what happened to Haile Selassie. 4 years in Iran, you know what happened to the Shah. Now I'm very happy to be here for President Reagan. Great honor. It's appropriate that I'm here for my dear friend, President Reagan. He was president of the Screen Actors Guild when I was president of the American Guild of Variety Artists. And now, who would ever believe that I would be following you on the platform, the President of the United States? What a great honor. You know, for Christians and Jews, it's so appropriate. He's a goy. I happen to be Jewish. You know, my name wasn't Adams when I started. My father came from a small town in Russia called Chalupinets, which is near Borisov on the outskirts of Krupke and Mogilevsky gubernia. Such a parley you'll never hear again. My father came to America. His name was Abramovich. He was a Schneider, a tailor. Got a job with Hattie Carnegie, got very swanky, immediately changed his name to Abramowitz. Then the name became Abrams, Friday I became Adams. Once I appeared in a program called Strike at Risk, and Mr. Bill Paley, head of CBS, personally asked me to appear on the show. Mr. Paley asked me, all the big shots of radio and television showed up. Hubbard Robinson Jr., the head of television, Lester Gottlieb, the head of radio, B.B. Dino, Younger Rubicam, J. Waller Thompson. Very distinguished gentleman approached me. His name is Wendell Adams, typical New England Gentile, fine man, starch dicky, striped pants, clipped hat, Hamburg hat. Not only did his family come over the Mayflower, but his family before that built it. Be very friendly. He approached me, you're Joey Adams. I said, yes. He said, my name is Wendell Adams. I've often seen your name in the newspapers. I've often wondered, are we related in any way? I said, I don't know. What was your name before? Knowing how Ronald Reagan feels about the Jews, I've often been urged to ask him, Ronnie, what was your name before? Regowitz. My favorite story in the whole world, and you remind me of it as you spoke tonight. We've always wanted to be together. Never in show business has there been any other story, but no such a thing as a Jewish singer, a black dancer, a Puerto Rican fiddle player. It's always been a good player, a bad player, good or bad. We've always felt that way. As president of the Screen Actors Guild, me as president, but we work towards that goal all our lives. So I tell you my favorite story in the whole world now. 76-year-old man, cloak and suit business, a gvir, a very rich man, sees Sadat, goes to Jerusalem. He said, I'm tired of it. Everybody should be zusammen. Everybody should be together. There should be one family, black, white, Jew, Christian. Who knows about different things? We should be one family. Christians, Jews, everybody. If Sadat can go to Jerusalem, I can join the New York Athletic Club. Walks up the steps of the New York Athletic Club and says, I'd like to join your institution. He says, what's your name? He says, Joseph Abramowitz. I'm sorry, it's not possible at this time. There's a quota. What kind of quota? Did you see celebration was in Sadat was putting his arms around Golda Meir? Sadat and Golda Meir, Moshe Dayan were embracing. He said, I'm sorry, it's not possible. Goes back to his business. Says to him, buy me out. Gives him $4.5 million for his business. Takes the money, goes to London, England. Gets a nose job, a hair transplant, a body drop. For 20 weeks, 24 hours a day, night and day, learns to speak the English language. Takes diction lessons, 24 hours a day. Now he speaks beautifully. Goes to Bond Street, gets a double-breasted vest, striped jacket, Hamburg hat, cane. Flies back to the United States, walks up the steps of the New York Athletic Club. He said, I would like to join your institution. He said, what's your name? He said, Chauncey Van Pew. He said, where are you from? He says, Cheshire, England. He said, what's your religion? He said, Goy. I tell you this because I love this man. I love being with him. I pledge my love as my paper does, as my city does, as my country does. I'm honored that I could be sitting and standing on the same platform as the great President of the United States, and thank you for asking me.
You know, I guess everything is really relative. I never thought I'd follow Joey Adams. Mr. President, we're pleased and honored that you are with us this evening, and you must know that you have our sincere good wishes in the years ahead. And Dr. Kissinger, our thanks and our respectful appreciation for your being with us this evening. The benediction by Rabbi Ronald B. Sobel of Temple Emmanuel of New York.
Our founding fathers had a dream. They dreamt, O God, of a land where the dignity of humanity would be exalted, where the preciousness of personality would be cherished, where the voice of irrationality would no longer be heard. They dreamt of a democracy and conceived of a nation such as the world had never before known. And now, into the 3rd century of our nation's history, we, their progeny, lovingly affirm the dream that they dreamt. Grant unto us, O God, that wisdom of intellect and sensitivity of heart that will enable us to stand with courage before all corrosions of injustice, to build bulwarks of love against all avalanches of hate, to proclaim without taint of hypocrisy that before Thee all the children of humanity ought to walk with dignity and equality. It is our prayer that we shall so live in love as to be ever worthy of Thy benediction, that Thy wisdom will sustain our beloved President, his counselors and advisors, our judges and lawgivers. Protect him and keep us, O Lord, so that we and America united shall ever be the instrumentality through which an enduring peace and an everlasting justice might obtain among the inhabitants of our earth. This, O God, is our prayer. Amen.
Good night. Get home safely. Thank you for coming.